Today's class, we're going to be talking about the founding of the Rhode Island Colony, Connecticut Colony, and the New Netherlands Colony. Last class, we discussed Massachusetts Bay Colony and how the Puritans came to the New World to be able to practice their religion freely. While Puritans were here in the New World practicing their religion freedom, but there were limits to that freedom. There were disagreements throughout Massachusetts Bay with several Puritan leaders, and what happened there led to a lot of trouble. Some people challenged the Puritan religion as well as their laws and their way of life, and many of the Puritan leaders viewed this opposition as dangerous. So what happened as a result was many people were banished from the Massachusetts Bay Colony. And this is where we get Rhode Island from. Roger Williams was a Puritan minister who came to Massachusetts Bay in 1631. His reason for coming here was the same as the other Puritans, to worship their religion freely. Unlike many other Puritans, he believed in the separation of church and state. He believed that the church and the government should be two separate entities, not one and the same. So he wanted more religious freedom and less governing from the church. He believed that Native Americans should also be paid a fair price for their land. Both things that were very different than other Puritans believed. Many of the Puritans in Massachusetts Bay believed that Williams' ideas were too extreme, and this led to Williams to get banished from this colony. So what happened as a result is Williams traveled further south and founded a settlement called the Providence Plantation. Today, Providence is the capital of the state of Rhode Island. So Providence Plantation eventually becomes the Rhode Island Colony. In this colony, he made sure that church and government were two separate things, and churches would not be allowed to make laws, and government could not tell people how to worship their religion. And this idea of the separation of church and state is still a key ideal in this country today. Another famous Puritan who was banished from Massachusetts Bay is Anne Hutchinson. Unlike many of the other Puritan leaders, Anne Hutchinson was obviously a woman, which was very different from the other leaders because it was abnormal for a woman to be as outspoken as Anne Hutchinson was at the time. She's one of the first female religious leaders in the colonies, but she also criticized the Puritans for some of their beliefs. And what happens if you criticize the Puritans at the time is you get banished. So Anne Hutchinson is also banished from Massachusetts Bay. Then she also travels to Rhode Island, that was founded by Roger Williams, and creates the town of Portsmouth. And she moves there with other like-minded supporters. And now we move on to Connecticut. Thomas Hooker was also a Puritan minister who moved to Massachusetts Bay in the 1630s for the same reason other Puritans did, right, to practice their religion freely. But he did have a slight issue with how the Puritans ran their government in terms of, their politics. In Puritan Massachusetts Bay, they believed that only male church members who owned land had the right to vote. And Thomas Hooker wasn't necessarily a fan of that. So he gathered about 100 of his followers and left Massachusetts Bay, and they settled in a town called Hartford. Hartford now is the capital of the state of Connecticut. This town eventually became what becomes the colony of Connecticut. In the Connecticut colony, all men had the right to vote. So you can see a slight improvement in democracy, right? More people are included in the democracy. More people have the right to vote. And where in Puritan Massachusetts Bay, it was only male church members who owned land. Here in Connecticut, all the men had the right to vote. So it is an improvement in the right to vote, obviously not where we are today in this country. Some of Thomas Hooker's ideas for government become the inspiration for the Constitution. And he has also been known as called the father of Connecticut, but also the father of American democracy, since he did expand voting rights in the colonies. So the question I pose to you is, why might some people view Puritans as hypocrites? Think back. Puritans come to this nation, or not this nation, come to this land in order to practice their religion freely. But once you speak against their beliefs, they persecute you. So they leave this land, they come to this land because they're being persecuted, but while they have the power, they persecute others. So it's another example of the oppressed becoming the oppressor. So the Dutch in North America, we're going to move on to New Netherland, which eventually becomes New York. So in 1609, the Dutch sent out Henry Hudson, who was an explorer, to map the waterways in the New York region. Because we all know that many of the European explorers were obsessed with trying to find a water route that cut across what is now known as North America. Um, but that doesn't exist. So Henry Hudson sails up what is now known as the Hudson River in New York, and he, sees a lot of useful land, and he goes back to Europe and tells um, the Dutch that there is a lot of opportunity in what is now New York, and there could be expansive fur trade, a lot of timber that could be used for building ships, and that they should definitely try to create a colony here. So in 1621, that's when the Dutch West India Company is established. The colony is where now New York stands, as well as parts of New Jersey. This colony has the greatest population diversity in all of the colonies. Many of the settlers came here for different reasons, for to escape religious persecution, to flee war and natural disasters, and also to make money. And some of the population included Dutch settlers, English settlers, Native Americans, as well as other people from Europe and parts of Africa. So New Netherlands becomes New York. So the English and Dutch were rivals at the time, and the English were not too happy that the Dutch created this colony, because this colony is situated between what is, some of their southern colonies as well as their New England colonies. So it kind of creates a buffer between the two, and the British don't want that. And both sides actually argue that New Netherlands is their land. Um, so, since King Charles at the time believes that this is his land, he gifts this land to his brother, who is known as the Duke of York. The Duke of York sends his soldiers to New Amsterdam, which is now modern day New York City. Um, and he brings over several ships, points their guns at um, the mainland, and threatens to attack. At the time, the Dutch governor was Peter Stuyvesant. He is known as Peg-Leg Pete because he has a wooden leg. Also, he was known for being a very strict and harsh ruler and wasn't very well liked in the colonies. And the problem with that is no one was willing to fight for him, and no one was willing to fight for him to defend the land. So they didn't do so. And Peter Stuyvesant was forced to surrender the colony without a single shot being fired. So fast forward, England takes over the colony and now renames it to New York. There's a video to watch. Please watch this video. It's a really good video that summarizes the founding of the New Netherlands colony. And there's an exit ticket that you can still complete right now.